Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today's Wednesday, and normally we do a little bit of a market watch, but we have a special guest tomorrow for a little Halloween trick-or-treat special. So we'll kind of be making that our market watch tomorrow. So I thought, we finished up week 8. We're headed into week 9. We're at the mid-season. So why don't we do a little bit of a review? We're going to give our fantasy football awards out today. We're going to talk about the MVP, the rookie of the year, of course, but then we're going to talk about the best picks, the worst picks, some of the disappointing players, some of the surprising players. It's going to be a fun one. I'm very excited. So go ahead and take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I've got a good cup of Joe this morning, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it just goes down smoother, and this Wednesday morning, it's a beautiful cup of Joe. Good morning, everyone. Shout out Dustin, Applied Literature, Ryan, Lucas, KOA, Mark, Donald. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for listening as well. Guys, if you want, you can always find the Wake and Take podcast via the link in the description if you just feel like listening instead of looking. Now, as mentioned, we're just going to do Midseason Awards. Yeah, we had some news yesterday. Deontay Johnson going to the Ravens. It basically cannibalizes all the Ravens pass catchers. It's good news for Lamar Jackson. It's kind of good news for Derrick Henry as well. That might open up the run game a little bit. But for the most part, we're sad about the Ravens pass catchers. We'll definitely talk about that probably a little bit tomorrow as well as Friday's episode. So make sure you tune into that. But it's time to focus on these awards. So we're going to do MVP, Rookie of the Year, Best Overall Value, Worst Overall Value, the biggest surprise, the biggest disappointment, the biggest disappointment. And then we're going to go position by position, talking about the best pick and the worst pick that you could have made at that position. So I'm excited. You guys, I'm sure, will debate with me a little bit here, but honestly, I kind of felt like a lot of this was fairly objective. So I don't know. We'll see. But we'll start things off. I think everyone can agree here. The MVP. Right now, it's Lamar Jackson, and it's probably going to stay Lamar Jackson. Surprisingly, he has the 5th most pass yards so far this year. He has 2,099 pass yards. He's leading the NFL, all quarterbacks, in rush yards with 501. He also, while being top 5 in pass yards, actually has the 2nd most passing touchdowns as well. He has 17 passing touchdowns, and he's leading all quarterbacks in fantasy points per game as well with 25.5. He has been electric so far this year. He's basically the Ravens offense. He was the MVP last year, making a repeat campaign this year as well. So shout out Lamar. We're just going to go ahead and name him the mid-season MVP. We'll see. I was looking. I'm curious what you guys think. We've talked about this a little bit, I think on Monday's episode, actually. There's some interesting bets to make on the MVP. Jayden Daniels is plus 1,000. Derrick Henry is plus 4,000. And I don't know what the odds are for Jordan Love, but Jordan Love was someone I thought about for this as well, because the Packers have just looked entirely different with Jordan Love at the helm. And if we're to be literal with the award there, Jordan Love is probably the most valuable player on the Packers. And really across the league, I think if the Packers, if Jordan Love is able to tough it out, play this week and finish the rest of the season, and the Packers win out, I think Jordan Love is a sneaky candidate to end up winning MVP as well. But mid-season, and as things stand, we're going with Lamar repeating. He's been absolutely phenomenal so far this year. And the Rookie of the Year so far, and I think that we could probably go ahead and lock it in as well, is going to be Jayden Daniels. Just like CJ Stroud last year, he's taken a really, really bad team and taken them to leading their conference. They're now leading the NFC East. The Washington Commanders are. They're 6-2. And really the only other competition he has is, I guess, Bo Nix or Caleb Williams. But it's also a winning award at the end of the day, so I don't really think Bo Nix will really end up in the conversation the way Jayden Daniels versus Caleb Williams is. And just the way Jayden Daniels is playing, I can't imagine he loses this award unless he gets hurt. And we're going to knock on wood there because, God, we do not want that to happen. But again, leading the NFC East, the Washington Commanders are. He has more passing yards than Caleb Williams, not as many passing touchdowns, but where he makes up for that, he has 424 rush yards and 4 rushing touchdowns, which is also way up there in terms of quarterbacks, especially as a rookie. Like I said, I mean, if he continues playing this way rest of season, he's going to, like CJ Stroud last year, make a case for not just Rookie of the Year, but also the MVP. I think this is fairly a lock here at midseason and, towards the rest of the year as well. Jayden Daniels, the Rookie of the Year. Now, this one was tough, figuring out the best value. Basically the best draft pick you could have made. And there were a few options. Here for this award. Joe Mixon, Jayden Daniels, Tucker Kraft, Darnell Mooney. Those were all some incredible picks. Chuba Hubbard as well. Those were some great value picks. But the one I'm going with is Brian Thomas Jr. I am curious what you guys think. I think this was the best pick you could have made. Brian Thomas Jr. had an ADP of wide receiver 38. He was going in the 6th round, sometimes even later. I feel like I got him in like the 10th round in a few leagues as well. Like he was going really late. I mean, he was going after Keon Coleman, after Ladd McConkey. People were really fading Brian Thomas Jr. heading into the year. And we talked about it. We didn't really understand why. We had Brian Thomas Jr. over those guys here. And it's been awesome. I mean, he has been absolutely electric. I mean, he has more points than Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. Of course, injury is going to play into that. But with an ADP of wide receiver 38, he is the wide receiver 7 in PPR and the wide receiver 3 in standard. Just absolutely killing it. Wide receiver 13 in points per game with 15.5. Basically, he's the true alpha, getting the wide receiver 1 production, and you got him in the 6th round or later. Like, yeah, Joe Mixon, a great one. But, he went a little bit earlier. Jayden Daniels, a great one, but, was a quarterback. So, Tucker Kraft, I just don't think we can really count him. I don't know. I mean, he wasn't really even a pick. And Darnell Mooney, I think he's really the one closest because Darnell Mooney is putting up some big numbers here. But Brian Thomas Jr. is absolutely delivering a true ceiling monster season. And hopefully this injury doesn't actually sideline him for too long. If he can come back, I think this was the kind of the definition of a league winner. So for me, I'm going to say the best value was Brian Thomas Jr. I am curious what you guys think. Again, some of the honorable mentions I had were Chuba Hubbard, Darnell Mooney, Tucker Kraft, Jayden Daniels, Joe Mixon. But I felt overall, I wanted to go with BTJ. Absolutely killing it this year, crushing it. And to me, was probably the best pick we could have made overall. Now, the worst pick, this one is, everyone will agree here, the absolute worst pick. It was Christian McCaffrey. God damn it. Man, does it suck using your 101. In fact, I think every year I hate having the 101. Does anyone like having the 101? Actually? Because that's just so much pressure. So much pressure. You feel like you have to take Christian McCaffrey or you have to take a CD Lamb or something. You can't really get cute with it. And those that got absolutely zero cute and went with Christian McCaffrey, they probably are not even setting their lineup anymore. They've probably totally given up. Went from the 101 to literally not even playing so far this year. Looks like he will return week 10. So maybe we'll be talking about him as a end of season kind of turn it around type candidate. But for now, it's not even close. It's literally not even close. Christian McCaffrey was by far the worst value, the worst pick that you could have gotten. Absolute worst. This is a good point from Dustin here. Why is it that Christian McCaffrey is either the best or worst pick every season? You're right. There is no in between. He's either winning you your league or making you not set your lineup after week 4. But worst value, Christian McCaffrey, not even close. The biggest surprise. This one, performance obviously plays into it here, but the biggest surprise, biggest disappointment, we're also, of course, taking our expectations and throwing this. So this is going to be the most subjective. You guys in the comments, in the chat, let me know who your biggest surprise and biggest disappointment was. For me, Brock Bowers was my biggest surprise. I have been absolutely blown away by what Brock Bowers has put together this season. He's leading all tight ends in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and yards after catch. He's third in target share, target rate. He's second in fantasy points per game. He has the second most air yards. Dude has been electric. He's been so good that the Raiders traded away Devontae Adams. They didn't even need him. He came out there in his debut and had 8 targets, then 9 targets. And over the last few weeks, he had like weeks 5 through 7, 12, 10, 14 targets. I mean, he has been a stud and a half. And yes, he was expected by a lot of people to be a stud. I expected him to be a stud, but not this early. Like, oh my God, did he come out of the gate on fire? And that to me was just so surprising, especially with Michael Mayer there. You know, he's made Michael Mayer just not even want to play anymore. Just so surprising the type of production we got immediately from Brock Bowers. He's just crushing it. Absolutely crushing it. And congratulations to everyone that took him. I mean, he was probably one of the better picks at tight end. He's not the one I named best tight end pick, but he was one of them. I think he's the tight end 3 right now. He's just killing it. So shout out Brock Bowers. Huge surprise to me. Didn't expect this type of production so quickly. So shout out Brock Bowers. And the biggest disappointment, I actually had one before the show, and then a few minutes before I actually ended up changing it to Anthony Richardson. Man, oh man, has Anthony Richardson been disappointing. I don't even know if I have to go into it, but let's talk about it. Part of the reason we dropped Anthony Richardson is for the rushing floor. Well, how about 56, 37, 24, 24, 56, 45 rush yards, and only 1 rushing touchdown so far this year? How about only 1 game over 13 fantasy points so far this year? How about only 1 game with a higher than 50% completion percentage? More interceptions than touchdowns. Benched for Joe Flacco. Pulling himself out of the game, getting injured. I don't think it could get more disappointing than Anthony Richardson. Because, I mean, he had the QB5 ADP. Some people were betting on him to win MVP in general, right? You know, making the Colts a sneaky playoff team. And he's been awful. I mean, like, truly abysmal. Clearly the biggest disappointment. I'm honestly not sure if there's another one. I will be honest with you. The one that I had before Anthony Richardson was Chris Olave. Chris Olave, I felt, was a really huge disappointment as well. I see Tank Dell in the chat too. But Anthony Richardson, to me, I mean, like, when you also take in the preseason expectations and just what type of ceiling and fantasy point production we were expecting from Anthony Richardson, it's been nothing but disappointing. In fact, it's been frustratingly disappointing. The biggest disappointment award goes to Anthony Richardson. And we're already more than halfway through the show. This one's a burner. We're getting through this thing like crazy. So before we get into the best picks and the worst picks by position, I wanted to go play a little bit of an ad break. Why don't we hear about just what's going on in the beautiful world of Player Profiler?
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free, and one of our key missions is to make as much statistics and information and deep analysis available on PlayerProfiler.com for free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all this possible. If you can't do All In, that's okay. We have a draft kit. Or you can just subscribe to the player rankings. Those now include Tight End Premium FFPC ranks, our brand new data analysis package will blow your hair back. And of course, there's our Dynasty Deluxe and our DFS Dominator. Take a moment, check out our premium services to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.
Yes, the Player Profiler All-In package has everything you need to dominate your fantasy football leagues. And get this, guys, in celebration of spooky season, we are actually having a little bit of a promo at Player Profiler. If you do not already have the All-In package, We are selling it for over half off now. You can get $69 off the all-in package, which is pretty nice, with the promo code BOO. That'll make the all-in package a total of $66 in celebration of Halloween. Again, promo code BOO to get the Player Profiler all-in package for over 50% off at $66 total dollars. That'll get you the player rankings, the Dynasty Deluxe, the data analysis, the DFS Dominator, the draft kit, the rookie guide, all that great stuff on Player Profiler to help you stay on top of your leagues. Again, that's promo code BOO to get the all-in package for $66. Man, I felt like a commercial there. I kind of crushed that. That was no script, no rehearsal. Went right in. All right, best picks by position. Here we go. The best quarterback pick is Jayden Daniels. I know a lot of people are going to say Baker Mayfield, but Jayden Daniels it's Jayden Daniels. He had the QB 10 ADP, so it was still pretty high, but he's the QB 3 overall right now, getting the QB 4 points per game at 20.5, 1,700 pass yards, 7 passing touchdowns, 400 rushing yards with 4 rushing touchdowns. The dude has just been electric. He's just been electric, and his rushing floor is just phenomenal. He's really, really putting it all together as a rookie, and he's going to continue to do so. This was the best quarterback pick to me because you're not only getting a super high floor, but also an incredibly high ceiling from him without weapons, right? Like Baker Mayfield, we're probably going to, I know he didn't this week slow down a little bit, but he's going to start to slow down without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. The best quarterback pick you could have made was Jayden Daniels, just absolutely crushing it this year. The best running back pick was Derrick Henry. Of course, it was Derrick Henry, the King Henry, right? He has, lit the world on fire. It is phenomenal what Derrick Henry is doing this late in his career. He had the RB9 ADP heading into the year, and he's the RB1 overall in both standard and PPR leagues so far this year. He is the second highest points per game at 21.9, has over 1,000 yards and 11 total touchdowns already. We had Dan Williamson on last week. He says that he thinks Derrick Henry may end up breaking the 2,000 rushing yard record, and I don't blame him. Derrick Henry has just been absolutely phenomenal. The best pick you could have made at the running back position. It's not even close, really. Joe Mixon was the other one, but he missed some time, right? And Derrick Henry has just been insane. In standard, he's the RB1 by like 40 points. It is absurd what he's putting together. And he still has like 15, 20 more points than Alvin Kamara in PPR. And he only has like 8 receptions. So it's just Derrick Henry is putting together an incredible season. That was the best pick you could have made at the running back position. At wide receiver, the best pick, there are so many to choose from. And I already talked about Brian Thomas Jr. as the best value. So I'm going with best pick, kind of changing it a little bit here and just saying Jamarr Chase. Just going to go with Jamarr Chase. That might be a cop-out answer here. But for those that stuck to their guns and just went with Jamarr Chase over a Tyreek Hill, over an Amon-Ra, over Justin Jefferson, over CeeDee Lamb, over Tyreek Hill, that was the best thing you could have done in round one. Round one had so many landmines. Bijan Robinson's totally fine. Breece Hall is totally fine. Justin Jefferson's been good. CeeDee Lamb is starting to get on fire. But Tyreek Hill's been disappointing. Christian McCaffrey's been disappointing. Amon-Ra's been kind of disappointing. So Jamarr Chase was the best pick you could have made. The first round was just filled with landmines. And right now, Jamarr Chase, with his ADP of, sometimes he was the first wide receiver taken. Sometimes he was the 5th wide receiver taken, at the back of the first round. It was ridiculous. But he's already the wide receiver 3 in points per game at 19.8. And he's leading all wide receivers in total fantasy points in standard and full PPR leagues. He has 674 receiving yards off of 48 receptions and 7 touchdowns so far. And really, he started off slow. So it's going to get a lot better as the season goes along. He's just electric. He is the wide receiver 1. We're finally getting that wide receiver 1 season from him. For those that just stuck to their guns and picked him, that was the best thing you could have done at the wide receiver position. So many disappointing wide receivers this year. Those that got Jamarr Chase, their team is happy. They're happy. And yeah, Jamarr Chase, best wide receiver pick you could have done. And the best tight end pick was, of course, George Kittle. We talked about Brock Bowers being a huge surprise. But, George Kittle going around the same range in ADP as Brock Bowers, but performing a little bit better. He was the tight end 7 in ADP, and he's the tight end 1 in points per game, the tight end 1 in standard, the tight end 1 in PPR. He's averaging 18 points a game. He has 40 receptions for 500 yards and already 6 touchdowns so far this year. He's just crushing it. He's just crushing it. So he was the best tight end pick, especially with the Brandon Ayuk suspension, or what am I talking about? The Brandon Ayuk injury, the Christian McCaffrey injury, the Deebo Samuel injury. I mean, like, he's kind of the 49ers offense right now. Those that picked him are so excited. I mean, he has been phenomenal this season. George Kittle, the best pick at the tight end position. And the worst picks. At quarterback, you could say Anthony Richardson, but we've already named him biggest disappointment. And there was a quarterback that was actually going ahead of him that's been just as disappointing. Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was the worst quarterback pick. Because you can kind of make up for it with Anthony Richardson. You know, he went a round or two later. And usually if you were drafting Anthony Richardson, you understood the risk. So you were, usually handcuffing him with Flacco or taking a shot on another quarterback just in case. Teams that drafted Patrick Mahomes bet on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they did Chiefs builds. They were getting Kelsey. They were getting Worthy. They were getting Hollywood. They were getting Rashee Rice. The worst quarterback pick was Patrick Mahomes. QB 3 ADP, and he is currently the QB 21 overall and the QB 18 in points per game with 15.7. Patrick Mahomes has more interceptions than touchdowns right now. That's absurd to me. Patrick Mahomes has more interceptions than touchdowns right now. 15.7 points per game. Abysmal, really. He has been terrible. The Chiefs' offense has been awful, really. I mean, like, this was the worst pick because, like I mentioned, at least with Anthony Richardson, you kind of hedged your bet. Like, I don't think anyone was only drafting Anthony Richardson in single quarterback leagues. Like, they were like, I'll take the upside swing on Anthony Richardson, and then I'll just draft Brock Purdy a few rounds later, just so I can still have a floor option if he gets hurt. Because that was the case, right? We all just thought Anthony Richardson would get hurt again. No one thought Anthony Richardson would suck, right? That's why he's a disappointment. But the worst pick was Patrick Mahomes, because if you got Patrick Mahomes, you didn't get another quarterback. In fact, you probably leaned into the Chiefs offense and you're disappointed. I mean, that was the worst pick at the quarterback position. Patrick Mahomes just sucked this year. And that's putting it lightly. The worst running back pick, I mean, you can't say anything else than Christian McCaffrey. I know he was the biggest disappointment, the worst value, but you can't, I mean, like, that was the worst pick. That was the worst overall pick. That was the worst running back pick. I can't even give you another one. Right? Like, who was as bad as Christian McCaffrey? Jonathan Brooks, maybe? That's the only other running back that hasn't really played that had significant draft capital. But I mean, like, every running back for the most part been fine. Christian McCaffrey, worst running back pick. I mean, I don't even know if I have to go into it. Was the 101, it just hasn't even touched the field. The worst pick. Worst pick, worst running back pick. Worst wide receiver pick. Tyreek Hill. It was either him or Chris Olave for me. I think we can all agree there. It was Tyreek Hill or Chris Olave. But I'm leaning Tyreek Hill because of the draft capital, right? Like, he was early first, whereas Chris Olave was second, sometimes third even. So picking Tyreek Hill was a lot more detrimental to you than Chris Olave, although both were horrible picks. But we're going to lean Tyreek Hill now just because of how disappointing he's been. He was sometimes the first wide receiver taken, usually the second or third. And he's right now the wide receiver 40 in points per game with 10.9. The wide receiver 43 in PPR. Just awful. He only has one touchdown so far this year. Only 30 receptions for 366 yards. Yeah, a lot of that is because Tua's been hurt. But even when Tua came back this week, he only had 72 yards off 6 receptions with no touchdowns. So he's just been a massive disappointment. A bad pick because of the first round draft capital. I mean, I'm sure he'll turn it around for the second half, but this is Midseason Awards, right? So the worst pick so far this year at wide receiver was Tyreek Hill. I'm sure he'll turn it around, but for now, it's Tyreek Hill. And the worst tight end pick, I'm sure we can all agree here, it was Sam Laporta. It was between him and Dalton Kincaid for me, but Sam Laporta is doing worse than Dalton Kincaid, and you had to draft him earlier. He had the tight end 1 ADP, and he's the tight end 17 right now in PPR, tight end 18 in points per game, only has 20 receptions for 272 yards and 2 touchdowns so far this year. And his best game was in week 6. He scored 12 points, and he only had 1 catch for 52 yards, and that was a touchdown. It's just been a poor season from him. It's looking like he's going to be able to turn it around with the Jameson Williams situation. But still, so far this year, he's been nothing but a disappointment. The worst pick you could have made at the tight end position was unfortunately last year's tight end 1, Sam Laporta. And that'll do it. That'll do it for our mid-season awards. That was a lot of fun. Guys, if you disagree or agree, put those categories. I'm curious in the comments. Let me know who you think the best and worst picks were. Who surprised you? Who's disappointed you? Who you think the MVP is? Let me know. I'm curious. I would love to see it. And since the show has gone so quickly, I'll do y'all a favor and answer some questions. Although I didn't see too many come in today. Yeah, Godwin or Rice would have been the best wide receiver pick. But unfortunately, the injuries kind of takes that away. What about Baker? This is a good one. Baker was another good choice and probably was, second or, arguably the best pick. Jayden Daniels to me was just a little bit better because of the rushing floor and everything. I don't know, though. I don't know because you could have got Baker a lot later. I guess the thing with Baker is no one was taking Baker as their QB1. Whereas the people that took Jayden Daniels as their QB1 are over the moon. I mean, their team is incredible. And if you did take Baker Mayfield as your QB1, your team's incredible too. But most people took him as their QB2, sometimes even 3. And so that to me kind of disqualifies him for the best pick just because, I don't know, your team is a lot different than like a Jayden Daniels QB1 team, right? At least that was my thinking. Yeah, 90% of the teams that drafted CMC have already dropped him. I'm excited. I was able to pick him up in a guillotine, just sitting on my IR. Hopefully I survive a couple more weeks. Is Bowers this year's Laporta next year? I don't think so. I think Bowers is just legit. Whereas Sam Laporta last year, we talked about it, right? Last year, I was suggesting drafting Sam Laporta. He was my rookie tight end 1 last year because of the situation. It was going to be Amon-Ra, and then there was no one else, right? Like Jameson Williams was suspended. He hadn't proved himself yet. I argued that Sam Laporta would be thrown to the fire and be asked to succeed immediately, and he would. I didn't expect that from Brock Bowers. I thought that they would kind of acclimate him. They have Jacoby Myers. They have Michael Mayer. They had Devontae Adams. They've got the pass-catching running backs. I'm sure Brock Bowers would get some usage, but I didn't think he'd get alpha usage immediately. That, to me, screams dog, and he's going to keep that up his whole career. Happy Hudson just dropped Anthony Richardson for Matthew Stafford. Just so sad. It's just so sad. I think, well, again, like I said, with Anthony Richardson, I drafted a lot of Anthony Richardson, but every time I did, I hedged my bet. And that's why I'm saying if you drafted Patrick Mahomes, it was a worse pick because you didn't. If you drafted Patrick Mahomes, you bet on Patrick Mahomes. Whereas Anthony Richardson, because of his injury concerns, you usually drafted another quarterback where it hasn't destroyed your team. Whereas the Patrick Mahomes drafters, they are doing terribly unless they got lucky and maybe got like Bo Nix, Drake May, or something off the waiver wire. But like for the most part, Patrick Mahomes drafters, their season has been ruined. And that's why I say that was a worse pick than Anthony Richardson. All right. I think that'll do it. I don't know. Marvin Harrison Jr. reachers. I don't know. I think he's turning it around. I think he's going to be fine. He's literally like basically the same exact season as Malik Neighbors right now. And they've both had the injury concerns. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is turning it around. I wouldn't give up on him at all. I'm sure he'll still finish top 12 by the end of the year. At least I think so. Cool. With DJ going to the Ravens, do we like Elijah Moore over Bateman rest of the season? Yeah, I guess so. Kind of crazy, but yeah, I guess so. Because, yeah, I mean, there's so many people in Baltimore now, it's going to be tough to predict anything and have any confidence in any of those players. So, yeah, Elijah Moore, especially with Jameis Winston right now, I like that call. Cool. Man, that was a lot of fun. I miss these short shows. They're nice to just go in here, give our takes, and then get out of here, huh? But you guys, you're just phenomenal. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to both Player Profiler and Player Profiler News. Make sure you check out the Wake and Take podcast. And don't forget to leave your comments about your picks for your mid-season awards, in your opinion. This is a fun show. I love doing this type of stuff. We hope to see you tomorrow. I'm going to have Tyler Knably, Tyler Football, joining the show for a little bit of a Halloween trick-or-treat special. We're going to be talking to players that we are scared to roster rest of season. So basically our top sells heading into the rest of the year. So you guys, you all have a wonderful day. Oh my God, a wonderful Wednesday and a fantastic rest of your week. And we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.